The dinner party glittered with laughter, crystal glasses chiming under the chandelier. While servants moved silently along the edges of the room, the millionaire sat at the head of the long oak table, his wife beside him draped in jewels. Her smile, sharp and cold. Across from them, the black maid stood quietly pouring soup into the guests' bowls, her hands steady despite the heat and the stares. When she reached the wife's end of the table, the woman's voice cut through the air like glass. "You're late again," she sneered. "Did you even heat this properly?" The maid's voice trembled. "No, ma'am, it's fresh from the stove," the wife smirked. "You're lying," before anyone could react. The wife grabbed the bowl and flung its contents across. The maid's arm, scalding liquid, splashed her skin, the pain instant and blinding. She gasped, stumbling back, but didn't scream. Didn't fight back, just whispered, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean—" The room fell silent. Forks frozen mid-air. All eyes turned to the millionaire. He rose slowly, his chair scraping the floor, his face unreadable. For a moment his wife looked triumphant, but then he said quietly, "Everyone leave the room." The guests exchanged glances, but obeyed one by one. They slipped out until only the three of them remained. The maid stood shaking the burn already blistering on her skin. The wife folded her arms, smug. "What?" She was careless. "I taught her a lesson." The millionaire's gaze turned cold. "You did teach a lesson," he said softly, "but not the one you think." His voice hardened as he stepped closer. "You just poured soup on your own sister." The wife's smile faltered, her color draining as the words sank into the stunned air. The wife's jaw fell open, her voice cracking with disbelief. "What did you just say?" The millionaire's tone stayed cold and steady. "You heard me." Her eyes darted to the maid, whose trembling hand still clutched a napkin against her burn. "Sister, what kind of sick joke is this?" The millionaire took a slow breath, his anger tightly leashed. "This isn't a joke, it's the truth. Before you ever knew me, before you ever saw the mansion and the parties, I was a broke man working 3 jobs, and the only person who ever believed in me stood right." There he pointed to the maid, who stood frozen, her eyes wide with tears. The wife's voice trembled. "She's a maid." He nodded. "She is now because she chose humility over hatred. She helped me start my first business, loaned me her savings, everything she had when I made it big. She refused to take money. She said she just wanted honest work by my side." The wife's face twisted in shock and shame. "You hired her here and didn't tell me." He stepped closer, his voice sharper. "I didn't have to. I wanted to see how long it would take before your pride showed me who you really were." The maid's lips quivered as she whispered softly, "Sir, please, it's enough." But the millionaire shook his head. "No, it's not enough. You treated her like dirt, when she's the reason this house even exists." The wife's breathing grew shallow, her voice cracking. "I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know." He stared at her, eyes burning. "Maybe not, but now you do. And what you do next will decide whether this marriage has anything left to save." The wife stood frozen, the color draining from her face as the silence grew heavier than the air around them. The maid still clutched her arm, the burn raw and red, but her eyes were soft, not angry, not even accusing, just tired. The millionaire's voice was quiet, but every word struck deep. "You humiliated her in front of everyone. You could have asked. You could have listened. Instead, you decided to wound." The wife's lip trembled, her hands shaking. "I didn't." "Hello," she whispered again, tears welling in her eyes. "I just thought—" He cut her off sharply. "You thought she was beneath you. That's the problem. You look at people and only see what they wear, not who they are." The maid finally spoke, her voice gentle, but trembling. "It's all right, sir. I don't want revenge. I've worked for many who saw me the same way. But I never thought it would come from this house." She turned to the wife slowly, her eyes glistening. "I loved your husband, like family once. He saved me when I had nowhere to go, and I swore I'd serve his home with respect. But I never thought I'd have to earn mine through pain." The wife pressed her hands to her mouth, shaking her head. "I was cruel," she whispered, her tears spilling down. "I was so cruel." The millionaire looked at her, but there was no softness in his gaze, not yet. "I told you once, kindness is the only thing money can't buy, and you just proved how poor you really are." The maid looked between them both, then said quietly, "I forgive you, ma'am." The words stunned the room. She smiled faintly through her tears. Forgiveness isn't about you, it's about freeing me. Her strength hit harder than any anger could, and for the first time the wife broke, truly broke, sobbing, into her hands as the truth settled in. The wife fell to her knees, the weight of her guilt breaking through every layer of pride she had ever worn. She looked up at the maid, her voice cracking. "Please, I don't deserve your forgiveness." The maid knelt slowly beside her, taking her trembling hands in her own. "You don't need to deserve it," she said softly. "You just need to understand why it matters." Tears streamed down the wife's cheeks. "I judged you by your skin, by your clothes. I thought kindness was weakness." The maid smiled faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let this moment be your strength, ma'am, because you can't change the past, but you can decide what kind of woman you'll be tomorrow." The millionaire turned away for a moment, wiping his face before speaking, his tone quieter than before. "I married you because I believed you had a good heart. I saw it once, buried beneath the walls you built to look strong. Now you have the chance to tear those walls down." The wife nodded slowly, still crying, but for the first time truly listening. She turned to the maid. "I want to make this right. I don't know how, but I will." The maid squeezed her hands. "You start by seeing people as people, not servants, not status, just souls trying to live with dignity." The millionaire stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on both their shoulders. "From this day forward, this house will never run on pride or fear, only respect and grace." The wife nodded again, tears shining in her eyes, while the maid's quiet forgiveness filled the room like light after a storm. If this story moved you, share it, so others never forget that one selfless act can rewrite a destiny in ways no one sees coming.